Hey, dear Tyler, good evening, and how are you doing? I hope you're fine. I hope you're good. Let me start by apologizing. I know that this episode should have come out earlier today. I've just been overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. Work has been really, really crazy for me. Just so much to do, so much to do. And it's been exhausting getting home late, tired, stressed. So, I'm really trying to work out a more consistent plan, but that's why you're getting all of the front and back, right? So my sincere apologies. I would have kept this episode till tomorrow morning, but I was like, no, let me just release it, right? Let me just release it now so that for those that wake up in the morning and get to listen, that would be awesome. For those that would probably listen to it this night, wow, double awesome, right? And then so something strange has been happening on Dear Tyler. I think for the past 3 days, we've had over 140 listens per day, which is really, really amazing because I don't even know how it happened. So I just wake up, I check my analytics as often as I can. So every day when I wake up, I check up on the analytics, see how much we're doing, how much we're improving, the listens and all. And then I think for the past 3 days, we've had combined close to 530 something listens, which is absolutely outstanding. And then I think we're up to 237 follows on Spotify. So people literally have followed Dear Tyler, about 237, which is awesome. And I really just want to thank you for everyone that listens, for everyone that shares. If you binge Dear Tyler, I know people have reached out to me that have binged the complete Dear Tyler from day one of inception, right? So that was since June 2021 up till now. A lot of people, I think maybe 3-4 people have told me that they've binged it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your contributions. And let's keep on sharing the content of Dear Tyler. I believe it's a blessing, and I would give my best to consistently remain a blessing, right? So let's get into today's episode. Now, for today, I want to talk about my culture, my identity. My culture, my identity. I'll start with the premise and then gradually get into the whole bulk of the matter. Now, my name is Nubinga Shimbura. I am from Taraba State, and I am Chamba by tribe. Right? It's a very, very colorful culture, extremely colorful culture. So for those of us that maybe follow my personal page on Instagram, or you're friends with me on Facebook, or my personal friends and all, maybe we've got WhatsApp contact relationship, you'll get to see a lot of times that I post pictures of my culture. We've got this very beautiful black with red, yellow, green, just various designed clothing. It's extremely, extremely beautiful, always colorful. And I'm particularly proud of my culture, right? I'm particularly proud of my culture. I remember growing up, I'd always thought I was Jukun. Now, typically when we're growing up and we're filling forms, for several reasons, we used to fill the forms as Jukun. But as I grew older, my dad, kind of let us know that, okay, you guys are not Jukun. You're actually Chamba by tribe. And that's a totally different tribe in Taraba. I think we're in Taraba, we're in Adamawa, I think some parts of Cameroon, some parts of Togo. Somebody said some parts of Ethiopia, I'm not too sure. But we're pretty spread. We may have, I think, different names, right? But we're all the same tribe and culture. Anyway, so one of the reasons why we adopted the whole narrative that we were Jukun is because majority of Southern Taraban people speak that language, Jukun. So just there's this stereotype that everybody in the north is Hausa, and that's the northern parts of Nigeria is Hausa, and that's far from the truth, because Hausa is just the predominant language. It's the language of commerce. So typically almost all northern states and majority of the middle belting states in Nigeria speak Hausa, but then they have their own various tribes, right? They have their own various tribes. Just like in the southern part or the eastern part of Nigeria, a lot of times you just, stereotype them and call them Igbo people, but they're not, right? They have different tribes, but majority of them can speak Igbo, and then they also have like a dialect of their own Igbo, right? That was, cut out from their own native tongue. And it was just, a way of creating a system of easy communication, right? Just to blend. Now, for instance, as a Chamba person, I should speak Chamba, but it's very difficult. So I speak Jukun, but I speak the Chamba dialect of Jukun, right? Not the original Jukun itself. So my own dialect of Jukun is totally different from the original one. And when I get to hear people speak the original one, it's crazy, right? But then my own Jukun was crafted so that there could be some similarities. Now, every culture has its customs, it has its beliefs, right? There are certain festivals that we have, there are certain beliefs that we have. For instance, in my own place, greeting is done by squatting, right? So everybody squats, and then you give like 3 hand claps. There's one pop, pop, pop kind of clap that you give. And in my culture, the eldest is the one that initiates the greeting. So when you go to greet, it's not proper that you greet individually. Everybody comes together and then you greet. Unless maybe, you're in different places or you're, just different times. But in a normal setting, when it's time to greet, everybody goes to greet. So when we greet, the eldest initiates, and then every other person follows suit. And then the clap must be 3 times, right? It's almost like that's like the standard. That's like the standard of it. Then you don't greet before an elder eats, right? So the elder must have eaten, the elder must have, rested. In fact, after the elder has eaten and rested, there should be some spontaneous gist, just talk out of line. Just give some random talk, and then in the midst of it, everybody now squats. The moment the eldest person in amongst the group squats, right? Every other person will now squat, stop what you're doing, and then you now greet. The elder will now respond, right? So the person you're greeting will now respond and ask you, how was your day? All of those things like that. So typically that's how it works in my own culture, right? There are other cultural things that I'm still yet to learn and understand, but then it's a very unique thing, right? Very unique thing. Now, for those of us that are not Chamba, you would be perceiving what I'm saying as strange. I'm sure like the first thing that will come to your mind is, oh, this is how we greet in our own place. This is how we greet in our own place. This is how we greet in our own place. This is how we do things in our own place, right? So typically as Africans, right? Typically as Africans, people with African culture, we dare not call anybody that is older than us by name, right? Especially if it's a parent, an aunt, an uncle, or any senior citizen. We never call them by name, right? We either create a title for them or we use sa, ma. Now, I remember when I think we traveled to Holland. My dad was posted to Holland, and so we, traveled with him, and we went to school. So one of my teachers, right, I was like, I think 6 or 7, and when I met her, she was like, my name is Heather. And I used to call her like, okay, Heather. And my parents would be like, okay, why are you just calling this woman by her name? And she just insisted on it, that please call me Heather. But over time, because of African home training, we dare not, do you understand? We dare not call anybody by name. Are you mad? Are you crazy? Do you understand? Right? There's like a standard reset button for us here. But then in the Western culture, calling people by their name is absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. In fact, they try to make you desist from any of those prefixes. I've had friends that have schooled maybe in the UK or in the US, and their lecturers, right, would demand them to call them by name. Please don't call me sir, don't call me ma, don't call me Dr. This, just call me John, call me Philip, call me Amanda, call me this. Africa will not allow us. We respect, there's just this respect that is revealed in how we address an individual, right? So it's just a natural thing. So there is a conflict. There is a conflict of those things when you switch cultures, right? So the people in the West will be like, okay, why do you guys do this? And we from this other side will be like, is it not strange that you're just calling somebody by name? You know? So the truth is that when you go to another culture, you have to learn to adjust to what they are doing, to adjust to what they're doing. The truth is that there are many times people try to come into our own space, that have absolutely no idea of our culture, have no idea of identity. This episode really doesn't have anything to do about tribes. It's more about, when I think about culture, right, I think about your ideologies and your beliefs. It's very, very important. Very, very important. Have you ever seen where somebody is contributing to a particular aspect of life that they don't have an idea about or an expertise about? It sounds extremely erroneous most times. There's just this level of confusion. So I try my best not to bring up issues about maybe faith and all. I'm a Christian. It's a Christian podcast. I believe in respecting people's religion. It's very important, as I would desire that people would respect mine. But there is absolutely no way I'm ever going to understand Christianity if I'm not part of the system. Yeah, it's very difficult. It's going to be very difficult for me to understand, let's say, Islam, Buddhism, or whatever other religion, right, there is, if I'm not part of the system, if I have not put myself in that position to be part of the system. There are a lot of things that happen that I will not understand. And thereby, my contributions would not necessarily hold water, right? Now, that was just using religion as an example. Let me give another example. If you've got maybe you specialize in a particular thing, right? So maybe you're a pro in the computer world, the IT world, right? Most of the people around you would be people within that same mindset. You're not going to put yourself in a circle of people that do not have the same values and are not pursuing the same thing. In fact, somebody that contributes to the IT world, outside of the IT world, would usually be put on the spot and be like, you don't have any idea of what we're doing. There was a story I heard once, and I think it's very valid to this. There was a lecture that was done about businesses, and a particular entrepreneur came over, delivered his lecture, and then, it was time for questions and answers. A particular individual stood up and said, okay, you mentioned so-and-so, this particular principle, this, we should do this. But my professor of business said that these things are not true, right? That it's not important. And then what the man said, the response was like, is your lecturer a millionaire in dollars? And then the person said no. He said, so sit down and listen. That you have an opinion does not necessarily mean you're knowledgeable. Right? Your opinion, everybody is entitled to their opinion. But because you have an opinion does not mean you're knowledgeable in that thing. until you can really put yourself in that position, right, your contributions will not hold water. One thing that really gets hit on is sports. Really gets hit on sports. I used to be an avid football fan, right? So I used to watch matches, go pay to watch matches, always wanted to follow up. I'm a Chelsea supporter, which is a very difficult thing to be right now in this time. But have you ever watched a football match and there's so many people speaking about he should have crossed the ball to that, see that pass, simple pass, he should just curve the ball that way, can't you see all that space? How did he miss the goal with all of that space available, right? And if you notice, most footballers don't even listen to those contributions because the people speaking are not even in a position to be able to see the difficulty in what they're doing. Now, when you're watching a football match, you have an advantage of seeing the field in a different angle. There's an angle that gives you a full picture of how the field looks like, right? So you could see the positions of other people. But when you're the one playing, your vision is extremely limited. It takes a whole lot of preparation, takes a whole lot of instincts to do a lot of things, right? Then the stamina, they'll be like, this guy is slow, he's already tired, he's already gassed out. And it's because, we're not in that same position with them. So that our own contributions do not necessarily hurt them that much. But when a professional footballer begins to criticize them, it becomes very personal. Why? Because that particular individual understands the perks. And it means that their contribution is not just coming from a place of opinion, but it's coming from a place of experience, right? There are reasons as to why this person really understands me. And this is something you need to protect in your life. People will always have their opinion. But you must know that if the person is not part of your culture, they will probably not understand the dealings in your life. Your identity is hidden in your culture. Your identity is hidden in your culture. It's, they always give that story of an eagle, right, was born amongst chickens and never knew it could fly. It was designed to be a bird of flight, right? It was designed to be a bird of flight, but because it stayed within a culture of domestication, right? It behaved like a domestic animal, right? It literally behaved like a domestic animal. And that's what happens when we try to, when we find ourselves in different cultures without maintaining ours. That there are things that we were designed to be, things intrinsically within us that were peculiar, right? And very unique, but we have silenced it because of the culture or the environment that we place ourselves in. Your environment will always inform your decisions, your perception, and your identity. It will always do that. It will always do that. And then it's also important for you to know where your contributions come from. So somebody will come over, and I used to think that it was, everyone that did that was being a little bit too critical, be open to people's opinion about you here and there. But if you're not part of the system, right, it's very difficult to contribute. So I remember way back then in Zaria, I had this friend of mine, I used to play the guitar back then. And then the joy in which I was playing the guitar, the lady was like, this thing is very easy now, is it not just two? So I gave her the guitar. And then she was now strumming. She was now looking at me, Pinga is not changing sound, Pinga is not changing sound. Pinga is not changing sound. And I laughed. And I was like, oh no, it's not the excitement that changes the sound. There are a lot of other things that you have to do in order to change the sound. She was like, wow, she didn't know. There was this other person I was trying to teach the guitar. And I told her, I said, if I'll teach you, right, you really need to be diligent. It's going to really stretch you. She said, okay, that this is not guitar, she can do it and all. When I now started teaching her, she was like, Pinga, my fingers are hurting. I was like, oh yeah, so it's part of the things that we feel when we're playing the guitar, right? It's not always convenient. You're pressing your fingers against steel strings, right? It's going to hurt, and the strings are thin, so they have a way of just, really adding pressure to your fingertips. So it's going to hurt, especially when you play for a very, very long time. And after 2 weeks, I didn't see her again. Whenever she sees me, she just runs away. Do you understand? Now, somebody will look at you and be like, it's not just to play instrument, right? You won't be able to take that person's contribution seriously because you know the intricacies of what it means to do your craft. When we look at bakers, the amount of time that they spend, when you look at people that are fashion designers, tailors, carpenters, whatever skill an individual has, right? Until you really begin to engage in it, you'll not know how difficult some certain things are. So it's important to know where your contributions come from, right? Somebody can just contribute without having any knowledge of it. Now, you can decide to take those people's opinion and then wreck it up. Or you can decide to find your family group, people that are within that same culture, because they will give you proper information. They'll be able to understand your own difficulty. Something very funny happened this evening. I was talking with one of our sound engineers, and she sent me a video, and I was like, sorry, please, what are they saying? She was like, but they stated it in the video. I was like, okay, I didn't understand anything that they said. And then she laughed. And that's how it is. In as much as I play instruments, I am not knowledgeable on the technicalities of sound, setting up sound. I don't know. Whenever I go for koinonia, I just marvel at the racks and upon racks that these guys are setting up. I just knew growing up, we had one amplifier. You chew one wire, you turn it, you connect it to one side, you push it inside one speaker, you carry your jack to jack cable, you connect whatever you do. I didn't know that there's a whole, other system. The best I can do whenever I'm in the circle of technical people when it comes to sound and all, is to listen and learn. My contribution is only towards my preference. So it's like, oh, I really want this type of sound, and I think it would be better if we do it this way. But anything technical, it cannot even be, I won't even consider it an advice. I think it's just more, like I said, that opinion. Do you understand? But I can't come and be arguing, within a system of people that are professionals. Right? It won't work. Just like me being a chamber person cannot criticize what the Yoruba person does, what the Igbo person does, what the Hausa person does, because their culture defines a lot of things about them, and the beauty of their identity is hidden in what they do in their culture. Beauty of their identity is in what they do in their culture. Now, how does this also apply to us in our faith? The things that we do as believers, a lot of people will not understand, and it's simply because they're not part of the culture. They're not part of the system. It's a strange kingdom to them. They're not going to understand. They're not going to understand why we pray. They're not going to understand why we study the Word of God. They're not going to understand why we give, the different types of giving, all of those other controversies. They're not going to understand it. And Jesus himself, let us know that, we're cut from two different ideologies. You don't expect them to understand. So when they come over to criticize you in your faith, you have to always understand that these people are not even speaking from the perspective of knowing what your faith stands for and represents. The tenets of your faith cannot be understood. And so it helps you to be careful with people's contributions, right? People can, like I said, give their opinion, but you know which one holds water and which one does not. It's very, very important that you do that. And you can also use this same thing in your own life. Same thing in your own life. If you're a footballer and Messi says, I don't think you're doing this properly, and then one of the spectators says, I don't think you're doing this properly, who would you listen to more? The one that is part of your culture. The one that is part of your culture. And some people would literally come to your own circle and tell you to desist things that are tied towards your culture. What constitutes your identity. They'll say, no, in our place we don't do that. No. So you won't come over and say that, I traveled to a particular state, or, I went to Taraba and the Chamba people are doing like this, and I think we, as the Yoruba people, we should do like that. It's not just going to make sense. You create enemies in that system. So, the moment you can protect your culture, you can protect your identity. The moment you protect your culture, you can protect your identity. Your identity is hidden in your culture. And your culture is a group of people with the same ideologies and beliefs as you. You are strengthened in your convictions when you stay within your culture. You are strengthened in your convictions when you stay within your culture. Right? When you protect those tenets, that's what strengthens you. So always understand, my culture is my identity. That's where my uniqueness comes from. And typically only those within my culture would ever understand what I need to do. So if I want to grow, then I need to be with people in that culture. If I want to learn a particular language, I need to stay with people that speak that particular language. Me being in isolation or me being in another location where they're speaking another language, apart from the one that I want to learn, will not benefit me in any way. Will not benefit me in any way. If I want to pick up certain habits, I have to find myself in a particular culture. If I want to understand things about economics, I have to put myself in a culture or in a system where everybody is driven by economics. If I want to learn music, I have to find myself in a community of musicians. If I want to learn baking, I have to find myself in a community of bakers. If I want to learn fashion design, I have to find myself in a community of people that do fashion designing, right? I can't learn football if I'm on the farm. Do you understand? What they would give me would always be towards whatever they are professionals in. So if you want to strengthen your identity, right, find the proper culture and culture yourself to it, right? I really do hope that this blessed you, right, and it opened your heart to a lot of things. There are a lot of things that you need to protect this year, and people will always go after it because they want to feel like they've conquered, right? But your convictions really matter, right? So I hope that this blessed you. And remember that I love you, I believe in you, and I'm always rooting for you, Tyler. Good night. Bye.